Good morning, everyone. Welcome to what is the first of what will be many business support hours. I'll run across the format of what we're going to be doing this morning in just a moment. The first thing, just to make sure that you're aware, is that we are recording this session, which will be uploaded onto YouTube later. So if you don't want your face shown on this recording, or perhaps you're not supposed to be here, just to make you aware of the fact that this recording is taking place, and so will be available on YouTube later on. Okay, so in terms of, I say this is the first business support hour that we've run. In terms of the format of the session, it will be effectively split into three parts this morning. So we'll do, apart from this notice now, this sort of welcome note now, we'll be doing some introduction, so going around the room in just a minute. So you have a minute or so to introduce yourself. So just sort of give some thought to your introduction at that point, introduce yourself, and perhaps just at that point also sort of give a very brief overview of what cybersecurity measures, if any, you've got in place at the moment, just sort of for the benefit of the presentation later on. So I'll come back to you all in just a moment in terms of that welcome note. We'll have the presentation that will last for 25-30 minutes or so, and then a chance to a Q&A section for any questions at the end of that. So two ways to do that. Either we'll save questions until the end. So as and when you think of them, more than happy for you to put questions into the comments box on the chat function, or if you raise your hand at the end, we can then come to you in terms of the Q&A at the end of that. So either way of doing that is perfectly fine. So happy to take questions, but we'll do that at the end. Before we get into sort of the round the room, just a sort of couple of parish notices really, and I'll sort of do a wrap up at the end. There's a couple of things I just want to flag up in terms of promotion and things to make you aware of. The first of which is our business e-newsletter, and you may already be receiving this, but if you're not, the business e-newsletter that we run out under the Business Swansea branding is probably, if not the best way to be on top of all the business support measures that we as a team are putting in place for you. So I'll put a link in the chat in a moment. You should have had it on the invite that invited you to this meeting in the first place. But the business e-newsletter will give you up-to-date details on not just the events programme that we're running through Business Swansea, but details of support measures through our partners, Business Wales, and also details of new funding streams, grants that might become available throughout the course of time. So I'll put a link to it again in the chat, but I would encourage you strongly to sign up for that business e-newsletter, because we're doing them sort of every couple of weeks at the moment, because I think the world of business support is quickly evolving and quickly changing at the moment. So to make sure that you're up together in terms of what's going on with regard to that, is the business e-newsletter is the way to go. And the thing that I didn't put in the welcome note, but I will include in the follow-up note to this, is our social media feed. And in particular, I draw your attention to our Twitter feed, which is @BusinessSwansea, and we've got a LinkedIn page as well, and I'll provide details of that. So rather than sort of take all this down, what I'll do following this meeting, either this afternoon or tomorrow morning, is I'll do a note round to all attendees of the session with a link to the YouTube video. So if you want to either watch it again yourself or share it with friends and colleagues, you can do that. But I'll also link to the matters that I've just the e-news and the social media feeds, just so you've got those to hand in a fairly simple format. So expect the email either this afternoon or tomorrow morning, subject to when I can get the YouTube video up and online. Okay, so in terms of introductions, I'll do myself first and then work through people and the guests in the room, and then ending up with our guest speaker who can introduce themselves and the presentation of that. So I should have done it at the start. I'm Matt Callahan. I'm part of the economic development team at Swansea Council, but more specifically leading on business engagement. So I've been in post for about 3 months now at Swansea Council. So most, if not all of you, won't have met me, and we're certainly face to face, and we're doing these online. Hopefully in the not too distant future, we'll get to meet face to face. But for the time being, we're running these sessions online. Previously, we ran these business support sessions at the previous local authority I was at, and when I joined Swansea Council, it was pretty much toward the top of my list of things that I wanted to bring to Swansea, because I just found that the format of this in my previous authority worked really well. by definition, it's a 60-minute session, but as part of that, you get networking, you get the presentation, and you get the chance to ask some questions. So it's a really neat format that I was very keen on bringing to Swansea Council. So this is the first of many, and at the end I'll tell you what events that we've got planned for the near future, in terms of not just the Business Support Hour, but also the Startup Enterprise Club that we're running sort of parallel to this as well. So the first of many. So in terms of, I could talk at length around the work programs that we're engaged with, but I guess it falls two camps really. First of all is the business events, of which this is one, and then secondly is the communications, which I've spoken some length about already. But I think it is not just true of Swansea Council, but it's true of pretty much all local authorities. One of the things that we identify is that there are a huge proportion of businesses out there who are just not engaged with or not aware of perhaps the wide range of support that's available to them. And there's a huge number of businesses that are missing out on support that's available to them from ourselves, from our colleagues at Business Wales. And this format that we're doing here is just a means of trying to introduce as many businesses as we can to the support that's available to them. So that's partly sort of the thinking behind today. So that's enough from me. I'll go around the room, and if at the end of it I've forgotten anybody or missed anybody out, please just raise your hand and we'll come to you in terms of the introductions. So a minute or so about yourself, around your job role, and then perhaps just a little bit as well around the cyber security measures, if any you've got in place. And if it's none, that's fine. That's what this session is here for. So don't be embarrassed at all to say you haven't got any cyber security measures in place. That's exactly why we run these sessions. So I'll start with my colleague Steve.
Morning everyone, bore da. My name's Steve Williams. As Matt said, I'm one of his colleagues in the Economic Development Department, and I focus really on business support measures, and myself and Matt work as a team in delivering all our events and comms. So it's really nice to meet you, and I hope you get a lot out of today.
Thanks, Steve. One thing I should have mentioned, if you can keep your microphones on mute until the point which you wish to speak, that just sort of avoids any background noise, but I'm sure you're used to being online meeting protocol after the last 18 months or so that we've had. So Simon Roberts, across to you now.
Hi all, my name is Simon Roberts. I work for Morgan Cyber Department. I'm a cyber security assessor for ASME, and I promote Cyber Essentials Plus, pen testing, stuff like that in the security sphere for Morgan, and deal with businesses throughout Wales, really, from north to south. That's pretty much me.
Good, thank you, Simon. Then Rebecca Wade.
Hi everyone, my name's Rebecca. I'm from Purple Dog. I've been running my business for about 7 years. Purple Dog offer predominantly WordPress website design and social media training for small to medium businesses. Recently moved to the local area. Things that I do for cybersecurity, I'm sure like most businesses, there's always something more you could be doing. I kind of cover the basics, but so I use 1Password to generate unique passwords and have encrypted safe passwords. So none of my passwords are the same, but all of any online anything that I do online, I don't even know half my passwords. So I use that, and that's a top encrypted solution. I do have backups of things. I use Google Drive, and I use the G Suite version, the workspace solution, rather than just the basic solution for business. And then I back up my computer via a separate online solution called Blaze as well. I don't have currently any employees. When I did have employees, they used 1Password as well, so they had access to the passwords they needed. But in terms then of cyber security, the only things I do, I suppose, is the basics, like not clicking on links and emails that I don't recognize. But I'm sure, of course, there is much more I can be doing. And as a small business myself, I'm working from home rather than an office. It's how to best go about that.
Good, thanks, Rebecca. I'm sure it's one of those things that there's always more we can be doing. It's just a case of what is reasonable for your business, and I'm sure that there are, as you'll tell us, Paul, many examples of best practice, not least of all leaving your password on a post-it note next to the computer that you think people don't do, but I'm sure that they do. But we'll come on to that anyway. Carlos, across to you.
Hi, everybody. So I work for Serco. We're delivering a project called Superfast Business Wales across Wales. You're probably aware of it. We're supporting businesses to use digital technology to a greater degree within their business, whether that be around security or around storage or just around like automation. We're kind of covering it all. Within Serco, we generally use SharePoint internally and externally to work with partners. So we're not sharing documents via email anymore. We have two-factor authentication to log into everything, which holds any sort of data, whether that's just internal or external data. I personally also use LastPass, similar to the last speaker, to generate my password. So yeah, I have a master password. Then most other things have a unique password. Granted, I feel I have like a disposable password as well that I use on websites that I don't really care about too much. Like, I don't know, to log into iPlayer and stuff, I'll have a disposable password, which I'll just use so I don't have to log into LastPass every single time I want to access something like that. But yeah, that's it. Looking forward to learning some more stuff today.
Good, thank you very much for that. And then across to, it says here, John Thomas 1940 Swansea Limited. I'm intrigued to what 1940 Swansea Limited is, John. So tell us more.
It's good morning, all. It's a themed visitor attraction, so catering mostly for school groups. But we've been open for 16 years. How we're going to come out of it, I don't know. We've got schools booked for September, but it's not looking good at the moment for us. But 16 years, yeah, it's something I set up with my brother. And you know, whether we can work online or not, I don't know. But yeah, as far as password and cybersecurity, pretty much what everybody else has said. You know, I'd like to think I've got a pretty good idea. Thanks.
Good, thanks, John. And then Danielle, did you want to do your little bit now?
Sorry, did you say Danielle?
Yes, I did. Yeah, go ahead.
Fabulous. Hello. So my name's Danielle, and I'm a membership and service advisor for the Wales Cyber Resilience Centre. Paul's laughing there because I'll get told off later. I am here in support of Paul Peters, who is the director of the centre, and it's my job to basically tell small businesses who we are, what we do, and why we do what we do. I'll let Paul go into the full spiel of it all, and I'm here in support of. So if you have any questions or want to catch up with me afterwards, I can, you know, pass on details and so forth.
Good, thanks, Danielle. Good. Have I missed anybody out? If they have, I don't think I have, but raise your hand, wave now. Good, I think we're done. Right, Paul, across to you. You've got a presentation for us, so happy for you to share your screen. I say we'll do questions at the end if that's okay with everyone. But Paul, if you sort of run through your 25-30 minutes or so now, and then we'll take questions at the end. Thanks.
Okay, no problem. I guess if I introduce myself first, my name is Paul Peters. I'm a detective superintendent from South Wales Police, but I'm actually seconded to the Cyber Resilience Centre for Wales. And in that role, I am the managing director of that. So I'm just going to try and share my screen now. I'm conscious of this. There's a few people already on this call that probably have potentially more knowledge of me in this field, but I'll plow on, and if there's any questions, obviously please ask. So I've been asked just to talk a little bit about protecting your business from cybercrime, and also give an overview of the Cyber Resilience Centre for Wales, which is part of a network of centres that have now been introduced across the UK. Should have checked. Can everybody see my screen? Is it sharing?
Yeah,
I can see that. Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Paul.
Okay, so cyber attacks are on the rise. In the past year, attacks on businesses have increased from 38% to 43%, and over a quarter of those that have been targeted have experienced 5 attacks or more. So often it's repeated attacks.
one of the statistics is that the average cost of a breach is over £8,000. Now, that varies massively. Some of the sort of larger companies have certainly experienced far more cost as a result, and some companies have experienced less. And it's recognised that 85% of breaches had some sort of people element, which really, I can't stress the importance of raising awareness amongst your staff and managers in your businesses. So we've all heard of big news stories of multinational firms that have been hit by a cyber attack, but it's not just the big companies. It's a very real risk to SMEs and small businesses. So, certainly we have sort of more local examples, and the impact of the COVID pandemic and more people working from home means that those sort of vulnerabilities are amplified. And, for a very sort of Welsh example, the Anglesey schools cyber attack, where they lost, where each of the schools in Anglesey had to go offline as a result of a cyber attack. So it's not just sort of the big international businesses that hit the headlines. And I think we need to be aware that hackers target vulnerabilities, not necessarily particular companies. Of course, you'll have hackers who will all sort of aim at one particular company, but in general, I would say it's far more that they're just looking for a vulnerability. And if you've got that vulnerability, then potentially you're their next victim. So it doesn't really matter where in the world you are. You could be in Anglesey, you could be in Cardiff, you could be in America. If you've got that vulnerability, those hackers are looking to target it. So I was asked to sort of just run through some of the main threats to small businesses, and this is very much how I see it. So I think probably the main threat is phishing emails. So a phishing email can deliver some sort of malware, such as ransomware. It can be used potentially to deliver malware that can capture your username and password details, or it can look to deceive you into making payments or providing some sort of sensitive information. Just this week, at the Cyber Resilience Centre, we spoke with a company who had fallen victim to a phishing email, and as a result of that, they'd sent £120,000 to a different account because they'd received a phishing email basically asking for a change of account details. Nobody made the necessary checks, and as a result, they fell victim to it. And it took probably a week or so before they'd actually realised when somebody rang up and said, "Where's the £120,000?" And it was only at that point they recognised that they'd fallen victim to this. So again, it's so important to ensure your staff have awareness of this risk. It's so important to know what to look out for. And I think it's one of the key things now to sort of protect your business. So if I talk about ransomware, I'm sure many people have now heard that ransomware is particularly prevalent. And it's where basically your data is encrypted. So you'll get a message come up on the screen. It'll tell you that you need to pay a certain amount of probably Bitcoin to a particular account. Otherwise, you will not be able to get your data back. One of the other things we see hackers looking for is data theft. So they will look to steal your data and again try and blackmail you. And if you consider the sort of data you have and the impact that might have if it was released publicly. Certainly, one of the investigations I led a couple of years ago, it was actually a Canadian company in this particular instance that was the victim, and it's due to the data theft. They estimated that cost them over $1 million as a result of that data being released because they refused to pay that ransom. So when I talk about the main threats to small business, I think you need to understand what sort of data you hold, what sort of security you got place, and the impact on your reputation as a business should that data get out or should you fall victim to ransomware. So speaking to another company a couple of weeks back, quite a large company in North Wales, they fell victim to ransomware. And once word got out, they had suppliers, part of their supply chain coming to them asking for payments to be made, which they weren't in a position to do because they had all their records were encrypted. The impact on reputation, because can you continue your business? And you know, they certainly felt that the vultures were circling at one point because of the reputational damage that had been done as a result of them falling victim to ransomware. So what I would stress is that it's so important to put these things in place for business continuity. So if you're considering sort of what cybersecurity measures you've got, consider how you would cope if you did get hit with ransomware, for example. So those to me are sort of the main threats as I see them to small businesses, and you know, that's very much come about from speaking to small businesses as well as understanding what has been reported to police. So I'm going to talk about some simple steps to protect your business, but what I want to start off with is this quote. So if people followed the basic security precautions available today and actually used them effectively, then I would not have been able to do what I did. So that's a quote from a young lad called Daniel Kelly. Some of you may recall the Talk hack a few years back. Well, Daniel Kelly was one of those responsible for that hack. When I was heading up the regional cybercrime unit, we worked with the Metropolitan Police, and Daniel Kelly was responsible for a range of cyber attacks and hackings across the world. He has since sort of served time in prison, and this was an interview that he was doing online some weeks back as he describes himself as a reformed hacker. But this is from, you know, this is from the horse's mouth. So if he says, and he was a relatively skilled hacker, I would say, if he's saying that if you followed the basic security precautions, he couldn't hack you, then, you know, to me that should be a wake-up call to businesses and something to sort of take into account. So, you know, at the Cyber Resilience Centre for Wales, we really do concentrate on the basic steps that businesses can take. And, you know, the introductions at the start, I know a number of you have some of this in place. But passwords, we advise not to rely solely on passwords, but to use multi-factor authentication. You know, for me, I use an authenticator app, which provides you with a code, which means that, you know, if a third party doesn't have the device where my authenticator app is, then they can't access. So that to me is a simple step that can be taken. And you know, when we talk about passwords, the National Cyber Security Centre, their advice is 3 random words. So just take 3 random words. You can put in some you know, some symbols, some capitals, some numbers, but that's the way to sort of strengthen your password. And I think it's good to hear, certainly in the introductions, that people aren't using one password for everything, because clearly if somebody gets hold of your email account password, then then you're really vulnerable, because that's normally the crucial password that can allow the hacker to change other passwords. Next step is back up your data, and most importantly, ensure that your backup is disconnected to your network, so that if you are hit by something like ransomware, you still have a safe copy of your important data. I think I'm so surprised at how many people in conversations we've had with people who've joined the centre as members, as to how many people have still got their backup connected to their main laptop. So clearly, if ransomware hit, then their backups are going to be encrypted as well. So it's a really simple step, but one step that so many people don't take. And you know, if you outsource your IT, for example, then have you asked the questions as to how often they back up? Do you know where it's backed up? Do you know how quickly they can recover your data? So again, important questions to ask if you've outsourced your IT. And then we come to phishing emails. You know, I keep saying it, but raising awareness to your employees and your management needs to be a priority. There are often telltale signs that can help identify an email as a phishing attempt. You know, time of email. So if it's come through at 3 a.m. in the morning, is that the usual time for an email in your particular business? It may raise some questions. There's often some sort of pressure through a deadline. You know, we need this payment by 3 p.m. And it's to put pressure on you into not reading the email and making a flawed decision as to payment. You get the Friday 4 p.m. email, as I call them, you know, when staff may be a little less vigilant, keen to go home, so they don't maybe pay so much attention, and don't sort of pick up on the sort of signs that it is a phishing email. Often there's a non-specific addressee, so if it's dear sir, dear madam, that may raise a concern, because if it purports to be coming from a company that you do business with, is that how they normally reference you? And if it offers something for nothing, in my experience, if something offers you something for nothing, it's a hoax or a scam. It's very rare that you get something for nothing. So again, that needs to raise concerns. Many of these phishing emails will have grammatical errors, and the phishing email may make an unusual request. Is it asking you to sort of make a payment to an unknown account, or is it saying to change account details? All these things, you know, I often sort of think to myself when I've spoken to sort of victims of this sort of crime, you know, if somebody's asked you to change the account details, just pick up a phone, you know, verify that. And you'll get inconsistencies in the email addresses, in the links, in the domain names. Sometimes if you hover over a website address, the actual real domain name will be shown to you. So the little things to do, and suspicious attachments, you know, do people normally send a PDF from that particular address? It's all things to take into consideration. And you also get something called spearfishing. And this is where the hackers will use social engineering to craft a very believable phishing email. And what I mean by social engineering is the hacker will research information that is available online from websites, social media, and they'll use this to craft the email. I was reading an article last week where researchers had identified a phishing campaign taking advantage of the Cassia VSA customers who were eagerly awaiting a patch for software. So this is an example of hackers using a news story to make their email more believable. And some of the, certainly where there's some of the spear phishing emails that I've seen are very well crafted. So again, it can be very useful to actually understand what information about you and your company is out there on the internet. So it's also always worthwhile researching that, so you can sort of understand what a potential hacker may find. And the next point would be make sure you've got up-to-date antivirus software. I think that's crucial. And also keep your software patched. Update your patches so attackers can't exploit any known vulnerabilities which they might contain. And certainly some of the recent high-profile hacks that I'm sure we've all read about often is a case of they haven't patched and the attackers have exploited a particular vulnerability. And lastly, what I would say is if you join the Cyber Resilience Centre for Wales, we will look to keep you updated as to the latest vulnerabilities, the latest scams out there, and we will provide you with guidance that comes from the National Cybersecurity Centre. So what is the Cyber Resilience Centre for Wales? Well, we're a not-for-profit company, limited by guarantee. We've been set up with the support of the Home Office and the 4 Welsh police forces. Our aim is to raise cyber resilience across Wales, but very much with a focus on SMEs and micro businesses. And the reason for this is that there is the National Cybersecurity Centre, but they recognise that maybe they found it difficult to engage with smaller businesses and some of the sectors across the UK. And so we're very much that local arm that can provide their guidance and support you. And also, we're also a safe place to come to in what is an unregulated market. And we are there to sort of also provide affordable cybersecurity. We've recruited 14 students from Welsh universities to provide services. They are under the supervision then of 2 very experienced ethical hackers, so we don't just let them loose. And we sort of provide low-level services, and the idea is if you're taking that first step into cybersecurity, it gives you an option to sort of come to a safe place and sort of try it out before you take a longer-term approach, probably with a professional company. And coming to that, so we have what we term trusted partners within the cybersecurity industry. These are the ASME certification bodies, and I'm pleased to say that Morgan & Morgan are on the call, and they are one of our trusted partners. So what we would do, we would discuss with you any sort of cyber security needs, and if our basic services didn't suit, or if you took advantage of our basic services and clearly needed more support, what we will then do is signpost you to our trusted partners who are, as I say, IASME certification bodies, and they're in a position then to sort of guide you through the next stages to making yourself more cyber secure. And what I also should say is that we're a partnership between police, private sector, and academia. So what we offer, our core membership, it's free. We would ideally like every business in Wales to sign up. We provide a regular newsletter offering the latest guidance and simple steps that you can take to make yourself more secure. We do have 3 other tiers of paid membership with additional benefits. The prices of those range from £500 to £3,000, and that's very much aimed to suit different business needs. I spoke a little bit about student services, which we offer at a discounted rate, and there's 4 broad categories there. Open source intelligence investigations. So when I was talking about the phishing emails and finding out what is out there that a hacker can sort of research, that's an option there where the students will go out and research that for you. We provide vulnerability assessments. So if you want a vulnerability scan, then we're able to provide that. Also policy reviews and security awareness training, where we would sort of look to work with you to actually identify what you required. And lastly, as I mentioned, referrals to trusted partners. We very much promote Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus. With this, we're able to sort of refer you to one of our 11 trusted partners who are the IASME certification bodies, and they can guide you through the Cyber Essentials steps and provide that certification. And sort of really coming to the end now, but I just thought I'd provide some useful addresses. So obviously we've got the Cyber Resilience Centre for Wales. You can come to our website. There we have the little book of cyber scams, which is a free download. Anybody can download that, and that gives you an outline of what current cyber scams are and how you can protect yourself. Also, action fraud and report at phishing.gov.uk. For me, reporting crime is so important. And the example I would give is, if you're living in an area and there's a number of burglaries, people report the burglaries to police. So then police send somebody round, they make inquiries, house-to-house inquiries, they forensically examine the scene. They would probably then devote additional resources to that area, extra patrols. They may have a unit who are specifically then targeting that area in an effort to sort of find out who is carrying out the burglaries and to arrest and prosecute them. If we compare that to cyber, there's massive underreporting, and if people don't tell the police, then police can't provide extra resources to something they don't know about. And for me, one of the really important things about reporting cybercrime is, you know, if police don't know about it, we can't warn other people not to fall victim to the same methodology. So again, I know that people are very busy in businesses, running a business, but I would stress the importance of reporting cybercrime. And when you come to sort of reporting a phishing email, you know, generally this takes seconds to send it on, and then the NCSC are able to sort of collate that and then put advice out in relation to particular current scams that are taking place. And we have No More Ransom. Should you fall victim to ransomware, you can see whether they already have the encryption codes potentially. And you've got Tarian Regional Cybercrime Unit, who are also there to provide support to businesses and individuals. So that's really my presentation. I would ask, any sort of business out there that's interested in increasing their cyber resilience to sign up for our free core membership at www.wcrcentre.co.uk. If you sign up to us, it takes a matter of minutes to complete the form. You'd get a follow-up call from one of our client relationship managers, and they would then give you the option of an appointment with our centre DI to discuss any concerns or your current setup. There's certainly no pressure from us to take any paid options. As a police officer, we're not about sales. We're really about protecting the community. And should you need that more sophisticated support, again, we can signpost you to our trusted partners. So I'll sort of stop there and really sort of open myself up to any questions.
Good, thank you for that, Paul. That was really useful. And in terms of the membership, I think it's probably a case of why wouldn't you do it at the free option, certainly in terms of the consequences of being caught out by some of the things that you've spoken about. Whilst you were speaking, there's been a couple of people join the call. I just wanted to sort of give them the opportunity to introduce themselves in terms of who they are, where they're from. So sorry to spring this on you, the two that have joined, but Sam, I think you just joined the call. Just sort of give us a quick outline as to who you are and where you're from.
Hi there. Yes, I actually work for Business Wales. So I just thought I'd join the call really and see what this is all about today. I think we actually met some of the cyber resilience guys at a recent meeting as well. So apologies for being a bit late. Got a bit waylaid this morning.
No worries. Thank you, Sam. And then
Sam works with the same team as me, Matt, on on Superfast Business Wales.
Right. Okay. Fine. And then Richard, is that Richard? Sorry.
Yeah, that's me. I'm a web developer myself, but I started training cybersecurity, so I thought I'd drop in and see that. Really, that's all.
Good. Thanks, Richard. I'll open the floor up to questions in a moment. I've just got a couple myself that I just wanted to ask Paul. And firstly, with regard to ransomware specifically, in terms of ransomware, whether it was ever the right thing to do in any circumstance, and if you do pay, what's the likelihood of you ever getting your data back if that's something you decide that you do want to do?
I'm not sure whether you broke up just for me or everybody there, but I think the gist of your question was around ransomware and probably the ethics of whether you pay or not.
Yeah, the ethics of paying and likelihood of getting your data back if you do choose to do so.
Certainly in law enforcement, our advice is not to pay. And it's because ultimately that money then goes on to sort of support crime. So it's the money is often funneled into other areas of crime as well, and sort of terrorism. So you don't know where that money's going. All you know is that it's going to a crime syndicate. So therefore, we wouldn't suggest that you pay. It is an individual decision, though. However, I spoke about one company that that had been hit by ransomware, and sort of I mentioned the Vulture Circle in earlier, a company in North Wales. Now, they were on they planned to pay their ransom, and ultimately, when they sat down and thought about the ethics of it, they took the decision not to pay, and police obviously then looked to support them in sort of how they approached dealing with the companies that are there to support them, that they pay to support them because they had insurance, but also with the actual hackers as well. As to whether or not you get your data back, that's sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, I think is the easy answer. You will never know until you actually pay. What you can do, and certainly if police are involved in any sort of investigation, there's sometimes an opportunity to sort of get part of your data back and actually test whether or not they do have the encryption key. There may be, I mentioned no more ransom, it may be that you can send off a file to them and they actually have an encryption key that's already been used. It really very much depends on the sophistication that's been used by the hacker.
Good, thank you. I guess the real answer is to have a backup of your data and therefore it not to be a problem in the first place.
Yeah, and that is such a simple step, and it just amazes me how many people don't do it. I've heard of stories, and bearing in mind I started presenting in relation to cybercrime probably 2014, and the story as I was hearing then was about people who didn't back up data and taking that simple step. And again, you know, we're however many years on, and it's still the same case. There's so many companies out there that don't do it, and it's not just your micro businesses, but you know, some quite large companies have things in place which are really not fit for purpose. So talking to a company recently and who were hit by ransomware, and they had lots of backups, but they were actually backing up to different depots, but they were all on the same network. So it really didn't make any difference that they had safe backups dotted all around their network, because it was all still connected, and obviously they fell foul of ransomware.
Is there any advice you'd have in terms of what good backup looks like? Is it a separate hard drive on a separate site, or is it a number of things really?
Yeah, I think it's a number of things. It very much depends on the size of your company as well. You know, I look at things in quite simple terms. So as an individual, I have photos of family holidays and all the rest of it. So I will back those up to a hard drive that's kept separate, and I'll back them up to the cloud as well. So the way I look at it is I have 2 backups should something go wrong. But you know, that's something which probably, if you came to us as a centre, we'd have an initial discussion with you, and really we may well refer you in those circumstances to somebody who can give you some proper expert advice, as opposed to sort of the simple guidance that we look to give.
Okay, and then the third of my 2 questions is around, if you've been hit once, does that make you more vulnerable to be hit again because they identify you as a soft, weak target?
I'd like to think that if you've been hit once, you've learned your lesson, to be honest. Yeah. So I suspect that you know, cybersecurity, and I think you can tell from the people on this call at the moment, but lots of people, when they don't really understand cyber, so they don't really prioritize it, whereas those that do know about it are sort of keen to learn more and more. And I guess that what I see is that those people who maybe didn't treat it as a priority, who have fallen victim now it's right up there at the top of their agenda, because they realize the impact, and you know, the impact can be pretty significant. If you lose your data and you can't trade as a result, then potentially your business is going under, and all the stress that then causes you, the effect on your employees who potentially then lose their jobs. You know, it can be quite a significant event. So I suspect that most people who have fallen victim to it once would actually sort of try or prioritize putting things in place. You certainly hope so, wouldn't you? Yeah. Anyone else got any questions? Having me ask mine now, either raise your hand or just unmute your microphone and go for it. I'll take that as, oh, Steve, yeah.
Yeah, Paul, very interesting. Thanks thanks for delivering that for us. Well, two questions, and Matt will confirm that I am in no way someone who is really up to spec on tech issues, but I'm quite interested to know from a police perspective how difficult it is to actually locate and convict a reported hacker crime. And would you say a lot of these hackers are based outside the UK?
So I guess the example I'd come back to you with straight away, I mentioned a kid called Daniel Kelly. He lived in Llanelli. He hacked TalkTalk. He hacked. He came to notice because he was carrying out what's called a denial of service attack on his college website, and that's how it came. That's how it was reported to my unit at the time. As a result of that investigation, we were able to see that he had hacked various places across the world, and ultimately, by working closely with the college that was suffering the attacks, we were able to identify him through a mixture of traditional policing techniques plus the sort of more technical expertise that the college were able to provide us. So that's an example of somebody who's a homegrown hacker, you know, living in Llanelli, causing. And he stresses now he's reformed, and I hope that is the case. But certainly he caused a little bit of mayhem around the world. If I think about another investigation now, which was a company in Newport that got hit, their data was effectively stolen, And we were able to sort of follow that investigation ultimately to a server in the Ukraine. We know that the hackers were across the border in Russia, and obviously that's as far as the investigation got, because we don't get that sort of cooperation with Russian authorities. But what we were able to do was send a team out to Ukraine. We obtained a mirror image of the server, the particular data that was stored on that server. And ultimately, with the help of the National Cybercrime Unit, we were able to get some analysis done on that. And ultimately, I think it was in the tens of thousands of passwords and usernames we were able to identify that had been compromised. So the result of that was we went out to the Police Protect network and said, these are all in your area. You need to go tell them that their accounts are compromised, and those that were sort of elsewhere in the world, we used Interpol, Europol to sort of send that information out. So even though we didn't get to the hackers, what we were able to do was actually start protecting businesses, because we were able to say your account's been compromised. So if you haven't been hacked, the likelihood is you're going to be hacked because criminals have got these details. So for me, in the sort of cyber environment, it's not always about kicking a door through and arresting somebody. There's other ways we can help businesses, but ultimately, I'll come back to an earlier point, we need people to report it. Otherwise, we can't do that. Measuring success isn't always about arresting people. You know, we've got to be realistic about that.
Sorry, I was muted. Was that all your questions, Steve?
I got one more actually.
Yeah, go for
it. Just quickly, yeah, I was quite interested. You were mentioning about outsourcing your IT. I used to work for a large construction firm, and that's basically what we did. And a lot of the time, obviously, these companies will entrust that IT company to to perform all the checks and balances with regards to cybersecurity. But what support is there out there for a company to who could they utilize to go in and do a full audit on what that outsourced company is actually doing to protect their company? Is there an organization such as yours? Can you do it, or can someone else do it?
I think that's probably an instance where we'd refer it to our trusted partners. You know, if you're looking to get some sort of cybersecurity certification, I would be recommending Cyber Essentials Plus as your most basic, and that means that someone like Morgan & Morgan, they have a list of criteria, and they would sort of ensure that that criteria was being met.
Okay, great. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Paul. Rebecca.
Sorry, I just had to find the mute button. Just want to go back to the backups you mentioned briefly, and I just wanted to clarify for my sanity. I back up obviously via Google Drive, but then you mentioned about having a backup separate. So do you mean like a hard drive that you then disconnect regularly? I just kind of
I was saying what I do personally.
Yeah.
It might.
Well, I meant
I think,
before when you were doing your presentation, you mentioned about having a separate backup, and I just wondered what.
You have to be confident that it's not connected to your network at all times. Obviously, it connects to your network when you need to, back up your data.
Yeah.
So you need to be confident that should your network be hit with ransomware, then it doesn't then move up. And I'm sure a lot of the cloud-based companies will have things in place. And I can see if Simon's come on, who's probably far more knowledgeable in this area than I am.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah,
but obviously backups very important, and how you do it is down to the company size and budget, and at the end of the day, you've got Google Drive. It's you've probably got two-factor on your drive anyway. So it's a good start point, really. You're proactive.
Guys, I gotta join this meeting on Teams meeting. Thanks, Al.
Thanks, Rebecca. Is that an old hand or another question?
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Sorry to offload and give you that sort of hospital pass, but I felt if there's somebody with more expertise than me, they're probably best placed to answer that one.
It was quite interesting. I'm just looking at the live cyber threat attacks currently happening, and currently there's been 14,700,000 so far today across the world.
Where's that from, Simon?
It's hitting at the moment. It's states to Russia, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Bolivia. So
okay.
There's a lot of violations going on today, but as Paul would probably attest to, it's this is a major problem worldwide, and doing the simple things for a company will protect you, especially cyber essentials, or just answering the questions to sort of put that in your mind. I need to do certain things with my business to protect it, and keeping it simple really, and doing the basics right.
Yeah, and I think just going back to Stephen's point earlier, I think this the 10 Steps of Cybersecurity, which is the National Cyber Security Centre's publication, or one of their publications. If you outsource your IT, well, there's a guide as to what should be in place. So there's the questions effectively to be asked. So take what's there and sort of start asking those questions if you outsource.
Good. Any more questions? It's 5:02 now, so we're always going to we're always going to run these sessions to 60 minutes at maximum, but there's a time for probably one or two more questions if anyone else has got anything further.
Matt, can I just come in here, Alan Brayley?
Yeah, of course you can, Alan. Yeah.
Firstly, apologies for being late. I've come in at 5 minutes to go, which is it's unthinkable of me, but I got tied up in an accounts meeting and I couldn't get out, so apologies for that. Just caught the end of Simon's little talk there about cyber security and what Morgan & Morgan do. We actually linked up with Morgan & Morgan some years ago now on it, and went through all that process and found it really, really useful and beneficial. So I just want to share that with you guys from a business point of view, that we take it really, really seriously, and we have the likes of Morgan & Morgan and Mike's team to help us through it and make sure we do the due diligence on it. So this is a great session on that. So thank you all, and thanks Stephen for the City County of Swansea putting it on. Just wanted to say
thanks,
that.
Alan.
Okay.
Good. Any more? Good. I'll take that as a no. So thanks, Paul. That's really useful overview in terms of things we should and shouldn't be doing, certainly, and hopefully, if all of us just take away one thing from this session and implement that, that's one step towards being cyber resilient. So thank you for that. As mentioned at the start of the session, I will email everybody that either attended or booked on to attend this session. So particularly for those of you who weren't able to arrive at the start, the video playback will be available on YouTube before the weekend. So if you do want to go back and watch that, by all means, you're welcome to do so. So I will email you not just the link to the YouTube before the weekend, but also the things that I mentioned at the start around our communications. So just to wrap things up, a couple of parish notices from myself in terms of sessions coming up. So I said at the start, we were running 2 sessions parallel, first of which is the Business Support Hour, the next of which is a date for your diary on the 26th of August. And that is going to be a session on brushing up your networking skills. I think all of us have been out of practice on networking in person for 18 months or so. So I think there's certainly something there in terms of finally, when we do get back into the real world, which I think is starting to happen, absolutely is starting to happen. I think if we can have a brush up on our networking skills when we start meeting face to face, that will be a really useful session. So date for your diary on that one is, 26th of August. And running parallel to that, we're running a series of startup enterprise clubs. And whilst these are aimed up at startups and pre-starts, it's not exclusively for that bracket of businesses. The session that we ran earlier this month was on social media for startups. But I think a lot of that crossed over into topics and tips that would have been useful for any business. And the next session for that is going to be on the 5th of August, and that's for legal considerations in starting up your business. So all of that is available on our Eventbrite booking page. If you follow that, they're all on there. But again, keep an eye on our e-news, on our social media feeds for those sessions coming up and everything else that we send out to you. So nothing further from anybody else. I'll draw the session to a close. I'll thank Paul once again for the presentation, and thank all of you for attending the session, the first of many of which will be running throughout the weeks and months ahead. Thanks all.